IronOverload.io hardcore is coming your way. This is episode 83. We're chugging right along to 100 on these. So we're talking about a very important podcast. We're going to talk about Nutrabol Mk677. We're going to talk about Ostarine MK2866 for recovery specifically. And look, it's very, very important to remember when it comes to these compounds that you want to make sure you're getting the quality on both. And I'll say that straight up. So you want to make sure you come on our forum, IronOverload.io, learn where you can buy these compounds so you don't get ripped off because most of these out there are not going to be good. But we're going to go over in this one several different things. We're going to talk about what is Nutrabol. We're going to talk about what is Ostarine. We're going to talk about our experiences with recovery, tips and tricks. We're going to talk about how to dose them together. And another thing too, I want to make sure you guys do come on the forum as well and put up some logs. Get a log going. And if you're going through a recovery process when it comes to injuries or you're having a hard time with recovery as you get older, it's really good to do these logs. So having said that, let's jump right into it, Mobster. Let's talk about Nutrabol a little bit. And I know you've used Nutrabol. I've used Nutrabol. The first time I used Nutrabol was many years ago. I was coming off some injury issues. I had some neck issues going on, and Nutrabol definitely helped me. And Nutrabol is not a SARM, even though it's sold as a SARM. You got to remember it's a growth hormone secretagogue, and it was originally developed by a company called Reverse Pharmacology. So in bodybuilding, we take these compounds and we grab them. When something works, we grab it, okay? And we start purchasing it on the black market. Now, luckily today, there's some really good brands and really good sources that can provide really high quality Nutrabol. As I said at the beginning, you can come on the forum and find those. But Nutrabol really came on the scene in bodybuilding, and a lot of people like it because it's a way that you can boost your growth hormone in your body without spending all this money on growth hormone and without having to deal with having to buy a kit online, having it shipped to you, having to reconstitute it, having the stress over keeping it in your fridge and keeping it from going bad and all that stuff. So really it rivals some of these other peptides, but it's actually does a lot of what they do and more. So a lot of people like to compare it to things like ipamorelin or GHRP6 for that reason. But Nutrabol does something more than GHRP6 when it comes to appetite because it can really boost your appetite depending on how we're going to use it. And we're going to talk about that later in the show on how to dose it. But the original reason that they wanted to develop this was to help with bone health, with obesity, and muscle wasting. So it's really a fascinating little peptide here, a little not peptide. I'm sorry. It's a fascinating compound that is really as close to growth hormone as you're going to get without actually taking growth hormone, and it really does a lot of good things. Now, a lot of people will like to stack Nutrabol with something else, and Ulcerine is another really good one that people stack with. Before we get into Ulcerine, I'm going to bring in Mobster. Mobster's really had a lot of experience with Nutrabol recently, and he's going to
Yes.
touch on what Nutrabol is and his own experiences with it.
Yeah, look, we've just done another show when we've talked about recovering from injuries, Steve, and the risk factors involved in pushing your sorry fat ass to lift the heaviest possible weights that you possibly can and rolling the dice and hoping you don't get hurt, hoping you don't have a disc injury, and so on and so forth. And we talked on that show also about high end sports athletes in multiple different fields. The obvious ones being basketball, tennis, American football, baseball, you name it. And Steve qualified that by saying, never mind the tens of $1 millions that some of these top athletes are getting paid, sometimes a great deal more, but also the cost of the team as a whole, TV time, advertising, and so on and so forth. And people want to be entertained, a little bit like gladiators in Rome. So if I can have my best athletes on TV, playing on the field, doing their shit, and I can bring them out next time and the time after that and the time after that. And not only do they just make an appearance, but they're scoring touchdowns, they're knocking the ball out of the park, they're helping to win the game. then the entertainment value goes up, that career of the athlete is extended, the amount that they get paid is fantastic, the amount they earn for the team owner is fantastic, and so on and so forth. Okay, well, I don't care if you're an American, professional wrestler, as we like to call them, the WWE, WWF, whatever. The idea that you can wrestle 250 times a year and recover from injuries makes you a face, makes you that you're going to be out there more, you're going to get paid more, and so on. And this applies to any kind of professional athlete. You just being able to make appearances and look healthy and be healthy is fantastic. And that's just in terms of promotion, work, or whatever. You're not out there in a chair on sticks looking like a beat up an old man. And we take that information, we take that vibe, and we look at how that affects us, average Joes that go to the gym, people that are lifting weights, growing muscles, just for our own benefits. So I am, as we record this show, 60 years old. And just a decade or so ago, Steve, I'd be an old fucking man at 60. And I mean, literally, I'd have, in the United Kingdom, Steve, 2 generations ago, I'd be lucky to see 65 or 66. Never mind at 3 score, 4 and 10. That was women. Old men would retire, and you'd 6 months to 2 years after retirement, that was it. They wasn't physically active the way that we are now, and certainly not the way that I am. Certainly not even as a post-40 individual the way Steve is. That just wasn't people's vibe. But now we want it all, and to arguably see if we can do it all. So I'd had a frozen shoulder probably 3 years ago, maybe more now. I've talked about on other shows my 2016 back injury. And so, of course, Steve and I are recording these shows. We're putting this information out there for you, the listener, to benefit from. And I was learning from the fucking show, Steve. I was learning about the importance of recovery. I'd literally had firsthand, Jesus Christ, that needs to be fixed, that needs to be recovered from, obviously. Frozen shoulders, 18 months to 2 years before you get even close to the ability for range of movement. Never mind the ability to push the weights, etc., etc. Those of you that follow my logs know that I've, in the last couple of years, bench pressed more now than at any point in my life. One of the reasons is I'm more aware than ever before about the importance of recovery. And the other thing, arguably, from learning from these very shows that we're doing for you today, is about products like Nutrobal Mk677. My experience, 20 to 25 milligrams a day, Steve, using a recommended source every single day for the last, it must be coming up on 2 years. It's part of my daily protocol. It's almost for me in the same ballpark as my joint products, my fish oils, and my vitamins. I might take certain other things when I'm on cycle. I might be on cycle. I've just only in the last nearly 6 months as we do this show, being on TRT. But every single day, I've been using Mk677. And again, 20 to 25 milligrams a day. Initially, I had the boost of the appetite, but fortunately for me, that's kind of slowed the fuck down because I can only imagine, Steve, if I was eating that much every single day. Arguably, because of my size, I well over 300 pounds at my height, I will have aspects of sleep apnea. I'm also an old motherfucker, so me waking up multiple times per night is not unusual. But I would argue that Mk677 Nutrabol has also enhanced my quality of sleep. I've also spent a great deal more money than I have in the past on a fucking good mattress, which is super important, and a supportive bed. And I become more aware, self-aware, if you like, Steve, but also with the information that's out there for other people, including what you and I are doing in the shows. I'm far more aware now of my ability to recover. I don't push 100 miles an hour all the time in the gym. I have 3 or 4 peaks of strength through the year. My drop-off, when I'm not pushing super hard, is still relatively high, but it's higher when I'm pushing. And so the idea that products like Nutrabol or Ostarine are out there to enhance my recovery, to allow me to do the things that I'm doing. And better than that, Steve, to do it at a point in my life, just 2 generations ago, you wouldn't have seen. You would not see, or if you did, and I'm a big fan of the history of what we do, there was a handful, and I mean like 10 individuals on the whole fucking planet that were lifting weights in their 80s. A handful that had physiques that most guys would give their eyes for in terms of bodybuilding in their 80s and their 70s. The idea that someone like me can push in a particular way to the places that I've been able to push to in my early 60s. And for me, I don't just mean as an individual, but for people like me and for people coming up behind me to be able to do what I'm doing into what used to be their old age is fantastic. To enhance the quality of your recovery as a younger individual, 20, 30, 40 years of age, one of the things that happens with recovering quicker, Steve, is you'll build more muscle in a shorter period of time. Any injuries you get recover from quicker. Your quality of life is improved. So, like I said, Steve, even if all I got was less injuries, which I'd argue that I have, and a better quality of sleep, I'd say that Mk677 is worth every single penny. Now, if I combine that post-injury with Ostarine, it's got to be something that people should absolutely look at, Steve. What do you think on that in terms of the ability for average Joes to recover quicker, to get more muscle quicker,
Yeah,
to
let's get into
enhance their
that.
quality of life? Yeah,
Well, first, before we do that, let's talk a little about Ostarine in the background a little bit.
yeah.
Although they're both got MK in their name, they're not the same thing. We talked about Nutrabol. It's not a SARM. It's a growth hormone secretagogue. And Ostarine is a SARM. So SARMs are selective androgen receptor modulators. And in this instance, Ostarine MK2866 was developed by GTX, and they wanted to create something for the prevention and treatment of muscle wasting. The idea is to, they wanted to kind of add it to hormone replacement therapy or even replace hormone replacement therapy to help people with muscle wasting. This is a very popular thing over the years, and there's so many things out there that do this. And anabolic steroids as well were developed mostly for this reason and for to boost red blood cell count and help with anemia and all that stuff. So this is one of the things they wanted to create something that was like anabolic steroids but had way less side effects. So one of the things they found out with these SARMs is how much they can help you as athletes. So we take the therapeutic dose and we jack it up. And Mobster mentioned the dosing that's typically recommended. So in Ostarine's case, we like to run a much higher dose, and we've seen in recent years people are running more and more Ostarine. So we're going to get into the dosing and how to dose these together for recovery in a second. But let's get more into our experiences with recovery and tips and tricks. And again, as you get older, as Mobster said, we're getting older, and 40 is the new 30, and 50 is the new 35, and 60, as Mobster is the new 45. So as we get older, we feel younger. So one of the things that we like to do in between our workouts is have a very crisp recovery. And these things work incredibly well for that. And one of the things that helps in that is sleep. And we struggle with sleep in our modern society a lot because of bad habits. We're always on our phones, our iPhones. We're always on our iPads. We got electronics going at all times. We're hooked on social media, and it's not good because before bed you've got to unwind. You got to clear your mind. You got to be able to go to sleep without anything in your brain that's going to interrupt your sleep. So it's one of those things where we have to do a better job when it comes to sleep. So if we're going to use Nutrabol and Ostarine together, we've got to clean up some other things. And one of the things you can clean up is shutting off your electronics a couple hours before bed. But if it's not possible because of work commitments, then what you can do is get blue blocker glasses and put those on. And that will help block that blue light so it doesn't trick your brain into thinking it's still daylight. So that will help. Relaxing, listening to some relaxing music will help. Yoga, meditation, stretching, any of this stuff will help. Getting rid of electronics in our bedroom. I don't allow electronics in my bedroom, Mobster. No, you're not allowed to bring it.
Let me give you one example that men don't do that women do that actually will enhance your recovery. How many men, Steve, have a long hot soak in the bath after the gym versus how many women, just because will have a long hot soak in the bath without realizing that these massaging tools, the long hot soak in the bath, whatever, will enhance your recovery. Women will literally, especially if they're dating, Steve, post pictures of their knees in a bath. And you'll go, oh, that's really nice. A man never does that. And a man will hit the shower. They don't post photographs of themselves having a long hot soak in a bath. And literally, I've talked about on other shows, the hot and cold therapy, the cryotherapy. I've literally had guys come onto the forum, Steve, and said, oh, my muscles are still sore from training. What can I do? And we talk about massaging and sports therapy and then up in your protein intake a little and so on and so forth. But literally, a long hot soak in your bath after the gym is amazing. Relaxes you. And like I said, I 100% agree with Steve. Me and Steve were on the same fucking page all day long when it comes to the importance of sleep and recovery. It's super, super important. Look, Steve, you and I, it's kind of annoying that even though we do these shows, you and I have had to, at times in our life, in our training careers, whatever you want to call it, our experience, have had to learn the fucking hard way the importance of recovery. We've literally just recorded a show talking about BBC 157 and how you need to inject it at post-injury because of the, having to get injured to learn the effectiveness of an ingredient, having to do these particular things. It's super, super important, guys, that you don't get injured, that you understand how these two products will help you recover and so on and so forth. So, yeah, look, rest and recovery and sleep specifically is super, super important. Talk about that, Steve, before we talk about dosing these products together.
One of the things I noticed when I ran Nutrabol was how much better I slept, how much harder I slept. I would have more dreams that I remembered because you're getting into a deeper sleep. So Nutrabol doesn't necessarily, this is what I tell my clients, it doesn't necessarily make you sleep better, but it makes you sleep harder, if that makes sense. So you're able to get less sleep because you're sleeping in a deeper state of sleep. And that's really convenient. We have our pets sleep with us, Mobster, and our pets snore and our pets walk around. I don't know if your cats do this. Your cats walk on you in the middle of the night.
They try to,
Yeah.
Steve.
So we get interrupted in our sleep, but when you're on Nutrabol, it's like the little things that happen, you don't get interrupted. Or if the air conditioner pops on in the middle of the night and wakes you up, you sleep harder. So with Nutrabol, we're going to get into dosing. If you're looking to enhance your sleep, Nutrabol is an amazing tool to use before bed. And that's the way you want to use it. Now, when it comes to nutrition, the nutrition side, obviously quality nutrition is important for recovery. If you're in a famine state, um, and you're very deficient in your nutrition, you're not going to be able to recover, obviously. So obviously Nutrabol will help with that as well. So if you're looking for that to use Nutrabol from that aspect of recovery, you can use Nutrabol in the morning. And let me tell you something, your appetite will be insane all day because of the increase in ghrelin that it's creating in your body. That hunger hormone called ghrelin goes up and down throughout the day, and it's found in all these animals, like cats, for example. That hunger hormone gets that cat to get up and go look for food and try to find food, and that's in nature. I don't care what kind of animal it is. There's an instinctual nature to go look for food and find food and get nutrition that they need. Otherwise, they would just die of starvation. So we have that for a reason. Well, with Nutribol, it's the cheat code when it comes to ghrelin. It will actually elevate it where you're going to be voraciously hungry. So for me, I already have a voracious hunger. I'm a ectomorph. I grew up a skinny kid, and then as I got older, I started really getting an appetite increase all the time. So I don't have an issue with hunger. So for me, using Nutribol in the morning doesn't do me any good because I don't want to have more hunger. I already have enough of a hunger. So for me, I'll use the Nutrabol when I use it for recovery before bed, and this way it'll help me sleep better. And then you'll wake up probably really, really hungry as well in the morning. So there's different ways to utilize Nutrabol. So the dosing on the Nutrabol can vary anywhere from 10 milligrams, if you want to go the low end, to 20 to 30. Some people go a little more, but I think the sweet spot with Nutrabol, Mobster talked about it earlier, is around 25 milligrams a day. And you can do half of that in the morning and half of that in the evening. Just depends what you're looking for. You can do it all in the evening, or you can do half of that in the evening and then take a couple days off. So Nutrabol is not like you're using
Let
anabolic
me
steroids.
throw in this particular tidbit, guys. So Steve is 100% correct in terms of enhancement of appetite, especially for those of you who are struggling to eat or put on weight. I would argue, Steve, and especially when we combine it with Ostarine, if you want recovery and you want better sleep, evening. If you want appetite and more hunger and a response to grilling, morning. That's an oversimplification, but it's the most direct and concise way. Now, there will be combinations. You can split it up. You could play around with a dosage, 5, 10 milligrams, but for the most part, that's the place to start from. I do take it in the morning. It did 100% affect my appetite, but it's, for me now, my body's got used to it. I eat enough, but I do enjoy better sleep, as Steve said. So I've kind of settled into a routine with what I'm doing. That makes me a little bit of an outlier for the, especially for the new person that's approaching this. You're going to want a template to work from, and that I think is the template to work from, Steve. What about, and this is important, guys, it's an important point when we're talking about Ostarine, and something that Steve said earlier on in terms of the research, which regards muscle wasting issues and products, ingredients, sports supplements, and specifically drugs that might enhance retention of muscle due to a medical condition always makes a bodybuilders, a weightlifters, strength athletes ears perk up. So there's a slight difference here, Steve, when it comes to dosaging, and especially because we're talking about this as a recombination of recovery in terms of how you use Ostarine solo, specifically for recovery versus muscle building, and arguably potentially in combination with other sarms and or steroids indeed. So Steve, talk about that, because specifically we're talking about recovery today. So I would go for a lower dosage. And I talked to Steve about this in the pre-show. But Steve said if it was for muscle building purposes, that again, that anti-cannibalism, less muscle wasting, especially while you're dieting. But never mind that, we're looking for the anabolic, the building up. The dosages tend to be higher. But it's that back and forth, Steve, and getting people the right information for what they want according to the way that they're going to use it. I'll use this phrase before bringing Steve back in. We've all got the same toolbox to play with, but we want the right tool for the right job. So talk about the difference in dosages for those particular things, Steve, and the way that it's going to be used.
What I was
In
saying,
common.
yeah, what I was saying earlier, before you jumped in about the Nutrabol, is you got to remember it's not an anabolic steroid, it's not a SARM. You don't have to treat it like a hormone where you have to be so consistent with it. Now, obviously, if you take it on a consistent day-to-day basis, that's going to help you reach your goal. But with Nutrabol, you can start and stop it at your leisure. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be ran,
There's
you
no
know.
suppression, Steve. It's, in fact, if anything, it's enhancement, not
Yeah, so
suppression.
so I it's a pulse. It's a pulse effect, you know.
Yeah.
So when you use it, like you can use it, let's say you like to sleep in on the weekends. You can take it before bed or when you wake up at night to go to the bathroom. You can take it in the middle of the night to help you sleep in and sleep longer on the weekend, and so you can get extra sleep. You know what I'm saying? So you can take it twice a week, you take it once a week, you can take it 7 days a week. You could take it for a month straight, you could take it for 3 months straight, you could take it for 6 months straight, and then you could take it for 2 weeks and then stop it for 2 weeks. So there's no consistency needed. Ulcerine's a little different. It is a SARM. So it is going to have some suppression, and it's going to affect, your reproductive system a little bit. So with Ostarine, you want to take it on a consistent basis and plan it So with Ostarine, 8 to 12 weeks is the standard length of time you want to use it. And then with the Nutrabol, you can throw it in here and there as you want, or you can just run it with the Ostarine on a daily basis. So we gave you lots of different ways to use it. It is just gonna be dependent on what you're looking to do and what your goals are. So that's the beauty thing about how flexible Nutrabol is. So I have a lot of respect for Nutrabol. It's one of the most interesting compounds out there in terms of what it can do, and it's so much cleaner and easier than to have to go through the trouble of spending all that money and time on growth hormone. So that's why it's gained such popularity. So it's really one that will help. The recovery when you run them together is going to be extraordinary. When you run them by themselves, it's going to be excellent. But when you run them together, it's beyond excellent. So if you want to recover from workouts, I wish I had access to this stuff back when I was doing triathlons, because that was my biggest problem. Is I train my balls off, and the recovery process in between my training or in between my races was an issue. And your body can't recover fast enough for the pounding you're putting it through. So I don't care if you're doing triathlons. I don't care if you're a weight trainer. I don't care if you're a gym rat. I don't care what. This is gonna double
Let me
the
jump in for a
recovery.
second here, Steve. I've just been reading the last couple of days Power Factor Training by Peter Sisko, and there's a little bit in there that stands out. You're going to like this, and I think the listeners will find this fascinating, just for the way that you're recovering from some of the things that Steve was talking about, whether that's triathlons or indeed marathon runners. So it refers to a study where they did muscle biopsies before a marathon on would-be marathon runners, top-level athletes. And the muscle cell damage included, and I quote, muscle cells or cells that were visible under the microscope that were turned inside out. And the writers then went on to say, this is before the marathon. They then go out and run the marathon, listener, or in this case, triathlon for Steve. You can only imagine, again, this is the writers, the damage afterwards. And the whole purpose of the book is specifically, Steve, about high intensity training and the time for recovery, which is, of course, a subject of today and using these two products. And said, in the case of the marathon runner, or in Steve's case, the triathlon athlete, 3 months and sometimes longer to see the cells normalize. And of course, in between, you're still running, you're still training, you're looking to do another triathlon, another marathon, and so on and so forth. And the importance of recovery in those situations is going to be obvious things like being able to compete more frequently, being able to get better times, which was super important, Steve, back in the day, and so on and so forth. And so it's super, super important, Steve. I think something that I was trying to get at earlier on, and I'll say this now, and Steve can obviously debate otherwise, is if I was combining these two products together, for me, the 20 to 25 milligrams a day of the Mk677, and for recovery purposes only, 20 to 30 milligrams a day of the Mk2866. Now, I've got that here, so I might start using this. But in terms of Ostarine in combination with other sarms and anabolic steroids, Steve, what you said in the pre-show, I'll let Steve talk about this now, is that people are running up to 50 milligrams. So would you stick with the 20 to 30 milligrams a day that I've discussed, or would you enhance it a little bit for recovery? And certainly, would you use more if you were doing it for bodybuilding purposes on its own?
Back in the day, we used to, when Ostarine first came on the scene, we were using 25 milligrams a day. And guys are even using 12 and a half milligrams. Now people seem to be using 50. So what we've realized is that, it's always about, you know, the raising the dosage until it becomes counterproductive or becomes the laws of diminishing return. So based on certain situations, people will go 50. So you could do 25 milligrams, and if you want to throw in an extra dose and go another 25 milligrams, that might be an option for you. But I've always run at 25 milligrams. So it just depends on your situation and really what you're trying to get out of it. So you've got to experiment with the dosing. This is a great opportunity to start a log. Come on, IO, and get your log going, and you can experiment with different dosing and see what works for you. And that's the good thing. And the nice thing too about Ostarine and Nutrabol is the price. for what they do for you versus
Oh, cheap,
using.
cheap. Yeah,
Yeah, the
super
price
cheap,
is
Steve.
really good. So yeah, all right, buddy. So finish up and take us a disclaimer. I think it was a good show.
All of the links that we're going to associate with this podcast come from, as Steve says, logs with the muscle tears, how products work, better sleep, better appetite, working with a personal trainer, and even a young 22-year-old using LGD as well, Steve. So all of those apply in your situation. You will find something that enables you to hook into your situation, what you're looking to use these products for. And like Steve said, you can play around with the dosages a little bit. We're giving you some guidelines, what's worked for us, that seems to give us the best results. But over time, people have gone up slightly to the 50 milligram dosage just because they've seen that has been a better sweet spot. And this is literally from tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of use over time. At some point, there'll be a cut-off, and obviously, as these information becomes available, we'll be out there putting out shows to give you the latest information, the latest ways, the best techniques and dosages for you to use. Now, that's where we are today, listeners. Have you got any different views? Have you run these products higher or lower? Let us know. Please note, we are not doctors and opinions are ours. It's our view, based our experience of views on the topic, a podcast of informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.